baptism videos, people who are in the Catholic faith.
You know, I don't even care. Sorry, go ahead.
There's a lot of things going on right now in the Catholic Church. What were you gonna say, Peach?
I was gonna say I don't care if it's wrong, if it's right.
See, I always think this comes down to a foundational issue, right? And when, so I know you're still explaining it, but I'll wait.
Okay.
Explain your thing.
Hold your thoughts. So, there's a lot going on right now in the Catholic Church, not just politically, which I have to say that this Pope is a lot more progressive than previous popes, which, you know, kudos for him, whatever. I was born and I was baptized and I was Catholic. I was baptized Catholic. I'm not a practicing Catholic. I call myself a former Catholic or a reformed Christian or born again Christian or whatever you want to call it. And the way things are set up in the Catholic Church are very much tied to like being sacred. They're almost ritualistic, and you have to do things a certain way. So there was this priest in Arizona. His name is Reverend Andres Arango. He was leading a baptism, and there was some people heard a slight variation in his baptism. And he said, "We baptize you in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit." And, you know, as he baptized his child. In the Catholic Church, you can't say we, you say I, because you are basically a conduit of God in that moment, and you are speaking on behalf of God. So saying we invokes community, while saying I invokes God. So this ended up being a major issue for the Vatican. And it took, this guy has been performing baptisms, last rites, you name it, like any sort of ceremony that's a Catholic, communions, which is a big thing. Like you have to take your communion in order to be married in the Catholic Church. He's been using we instead of I for all these things. So now the church is saying, well, all those ceremonies are null and void now. And that's devastating for this community, right? Mm-hmm. Who have faith in this particular thing that, oh my gosh, like my parent or my grandparent didn't get the last rite that was correct. Like, is their soul safe, basically? Now, I'm not a practicing Catholic, but I can understand like the concern there. And for the church to draw such a hard line is kind of interesting. And what's more interesting is that, you know, after this priest resigned, or Father Arango resigned, who, by the way, was not just in Phoenix, but he also had parishes in Brazil and San Diego. And these people weren't, you know, yeah. So it's like literally international. Other priests have come forward and said, oh my gosh, I've been saying we too. Oh shit. Another priest was looking at his baptism video, and his baptism, he had said we. So he's not technically a Catholic, and he's not technically a priest. So anything that he's done is now null and void. And basically the archdiocese, you know, in all these areas is saying it's just how it is. Like, you have to invoke the name of God, like these rituals are sacred. But this is the exact reason why people are walking away from faith, because it comes down to these little nuances, and the Catholic Church in particular. And I know, like, some of us are believers in the God, and some of us aren't, and, you know, whatever your opinion is, I respect it 100%. But I was wondering, like, what are you guys thinking? Like, I know probably Ethan and Keelan are not Catholic and probably have a different perspective, but I was wondering what you guys were thinking about this situation.
I was baptized Catholic. I mean, my hometown was a primary Catholic Christian based thing. You know, all Latinos and Chicanos and Mexicans are very hard on their religion. I know my grandmother was very religious, and I mean, for her it'd be a big deal, maybe not, but for me it's I don't care. Like, if the priest that baptized me said we instead of I, like, I don't care. It's not
Like, why
important
does
to
it
me.
change? Like, you did it with the intent of practicing in that faith. Like, it's
Yeah.
such a silly issue to me.
It really is. It's
As
fucking ridiculous.
you're
to
supposed to
think
be, yeah. I mean, even when you talk about it, like the Holy Trinity, right?
that.
So they, I don't get. At the end of the day, I don't understand how God's gonna say, "Well, I can't let you in on a technicality," right? Like, I don't think God judges people on technicalities because that's not very graceful.
Yeah, just
And
Ethan. It said that.
yeah,
It said we.
yeah, and to whoever's believe, I'm not a practicing Catholic. I don't believe in the Catholic faith, but at so like the Catholic faith has very rigid structures, right? That it's built off, right? Like the seven deadly sins, the saints, and all this. And I guess it might upset people if I say this, but technically, if you go by that, a lot of the items that Pope Francis talks about and the items that you say he's progressive about are actually in the rigids of the Catholic faith. Some of them are unforgivable sins, right? Like one of the deadliest sin, unforgivable sin, right? Like suicide, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the Catholic
Yep.
faith, if you commit suicide, you won't be allowed into heaven.
No.
If you practice homosexuality, you're not going to be allowed into heaven, right? Like those are Catholic, the seven deadly sins in essence.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, it's cool that Pope Francis as a person is pretty progressive, but as a man of the faith and leading the Catholic religion, I don't see that as a good. I see that as being, a hypocrite in a lot of ways, but there's a lot of points of the Catholic religion I see as hypocritical. That's why I don't practice it.
Agreed. And same. Like, that's why I'm not a practicing Catholic, because I don't believe in those things. And I refuse to, like, be bound by, a God that's supposed to be loving. And then, but it has restrictions. Like, in my eyes, like, my God doesn't have restrictions in who he loves. And that's just my own personal take on it. But when I say, like, progressive, like I get, like, the faith and, like, what you have set out, what your religion set out to do, but I do feel like as times change, just like our governments and history, like, we have to be progressive in ideals. And he's not as progressive as a lot of people want him to be, but it's like a start, I feel like, for people who grew up Catholic and they have commit one of these unforgivable sins, like, quote unquote, for them to be able to feel like, oh, like, I feel welcomed back, because a lot of Catholics, like former or current, they joke about Catholic guilt all the time.
But that's coming at, so that comes into a debate and theories on faith, right? So we each have our right to our own version of our faith, and even the Bible itself is men's interpretation of God's word. Right. So you should always approach it at that. But everything has a lesson to learn from, in essence.
Agreed.
And that's why don't always agree with the Catholic faith. But again, when faith comes down to it, it helps that there's structure in you preserve the history. I mean, it sounds dumb, but the Catholic faith was the same way for 2,000 years, right? And for better or worse, humanity progressed in a better way with that faith. And to change it now just so that it's more hip and you can attract more people doesn't,
and like a slap in the face to your faith.
Yeah, and it doesn't. So, like, when you see him come out and with ideas that contradict the faith itself, like, it doesn't make them look better. It doesn't make the Catholic faith more attractive. It makes you look more hypocritical to people who are actually serious about it.
Well,
I see what you're saying, but at the same token, like, you're right. Like, this is written by man. Like, and for thousands and thousands of years, women were suppressed in the church and still are. like they make these rules, and regardless of like whatever your faith is behind it, this was written by man. And like there has to be certain things that are realigned when you think about your faith. And maybe it's just Catholicism in general. Like if that's something that you choose to believe in, good for you. You have your right to practice your religion, and maybe you go seek something else out like I did, right? Like I was like, I'm not hip to this. I don't believe in this. I'm going to choose to find something else. And that's where the Catholic Church is failing in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And
Could also change it to say, like, instead of, make it look like we're changing to be hip and cool. Instead, they could probably say, oh, well, after reviewing and seeing and learning our history, we've come to open our mindset or grow our mindset, to say this is why we believed it for this long. But after reevaluating and, having multiple people come together to say it, this is what it should be a reflection of. Ooh, why can I hear myself?
I think it's Crazy's mic.
Okay. But yeah, just saying, we've grown our mindset. We've opened, our tunnel vision. We're growing in as people and as people of faith.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I don't know what is going to happen with this particular situation. Like basically, it's not meant to be like legalistic, basically, but it's more about the communion process. So like, in order to receive communion in the Catholic Church, like that's the year of Christ. It's like your little wafer. It's the body and blood of Christ. It's like a little wafer. And then you have the wine for the blood of Christ. You have to like be knowledgeable. Usually you get it done around 7 years old, in your faith. And then that's when you can take communion. So it's just like, you have to do all these little steps to get to a certain place. And why would you make it, I wouldn't say like harder, to show your faith, but like, why would you do it over a technicality? Because again, like Ethan was saying, I don't see God being like, oh, well, your priest really fucked up. Like, you gotta go to, the other place. Sorry. Like, I don't see that happening. And I don't believe that.
And honestly, like, in a time now, there are more atheists and agnostic millennials than there are religious devout millennials and Gen Z for that matter, too. Like, why immediately eliminate these people who want to be a part of your religion? It's a bad move. Like, from
like
looking at any side.
I can understand them saying, oh, well, unfortunately, this was worded wrongly at your baptism or this ritual or whatever you had done. Why don't we schedule a time for us to correct it? Like, come in, let's, get it fixed. I don't understand why they would just be like, oh, well, sucks for you. Bye.
Yeah. I think, too, is like what happens when it's like a last rite. Like, are those people's souls damned, or are they in purgatory, or like, like that's scary, if you're a practicing of that faith and you believe in that. So it gets really dicey, but, like Alan's point, like people are openly agnostic or atheist. Like we see this in media all the time, right? And we have these conversations when those two views are conflicting, like we saw in Love is Blind. Like it was a major factor for a relationship. So faith is very important. And I hope that the Catholic Church does right by its, people.
So just one last thing on it. Who do y'all know much about the Lutheran faith?
Nope.
Right.
Church.
So, yeah.
A German monk named Martin Luther went on and nailed everything was wrong with the Catholic Church, went and nailed it on the door and started the Lutheran faith. So I mean, when I hear the arguments, it's like, well, why don't you just go try, a different version of Christianity besides Catholicism?
Yeah.
Right? Or Christianity.
And also, one thing I always ask people, like, hey, I'm an atheist. I go, okay, like, what makes you want to be an atheist over having some form of faith? Like, I don't see the appeal of atheism, because if you have some form of faith, right, and at the end of the day, when we go to find out who's right, do you want to be right and you just end up in the ground, or do you want to have hope that there is something after? I guess that's the basic argument I always have.
That's kind of where I'm coming from too. Whenever Alan and I have had this conversation extensively, because he'll tell me like, oh, like I've had a paranormal experience, and I'm like, okay, well, you believe in the supernatural. So how can you believe in the supernatural but not believe in the other side of it too? Like, there's a balance in nature. There has to be a balance, like that. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, because from what I understand, the atheist faith is that, what atheists believe is that there is nothing after life. When you die, and that's the end of it.
It's honestly, like, as an atheist, the whole, like, you die, that's it. That's my explanation for mortality. As to why I don't have a faith, I lost my faith in humans, majority of humans, a long time ago, who have faith. Who've been devout their entire fucking lives, but they're still
shitty people.
The trashiest, garbagiest human beings possible. There are exceptions. I've seen the exceptions, and those people are amazing. But why are there so few amazing people when the religions that they're following just teach them utter fucking garbage, or teach them and allow them to be terrible human beings?
And there's an extreme side to that as well, because I know Christianity and I believe Catholicism, God's teaching, God himself, it's based in love. Him and Jesus are based in love. Like, yes, the Old Testament's got a lot of harsh shit on it, but the New Testament is mostly based in love. And that's what's so frustrating about the people that call themselves Christian, and they're like, oh, you don't deserve to exist because of this, or, oh, we should knock you down because of that. No, they're spewing hate, and that's not what God is.
Or they stir the pot and try to break up a couple. Well, that wraps up another great episode. And don't forget to join our amazing and supportive community on Discord.
In our Discord, you can find game nights, watch parties, food pics, Dungeons and Dragons, and more. What's not to love about that? We have a little something for everyone. Head over to our website, officialmillennials.com, and you'll find more info, especially our featured Gamer of the Week.
Speaking of something for everyone, we have a book club. We read a book almost every month and talk through it together. We also have a special perk for our subs to discuss other books in a series called Chapter 2.
Don't forget to swing by YouTube and drop us a follow at Official Millennials. You can also find us on Twitter at MillsOfficial. We appreciate all the support, and y'all have a good one.
This is an Official Millennials production.